these should match. They want you to graph the basic function 2 to the x, and then we'll translate it. So first, they want us to find the y-intercept of g of x. Well, remember, when we find a y-intercept, we make x 0. So we're doing 2 to the 0 minus 1 plus 2. So that gives us 2 to the negative 1. Well, remember, 2 to the negative 1 is 1/2. So that gives me 2.5 or 5/2. So on the y-axis, I have 0 and 5/2. So that gives me a point on my graph, which is nice to have. Equation of the asymptote. Well, let's graph this one first so we can see where this one moves to. So if you remember how to graph this one, we only need 3 points. So we're going to do f of x equals 2 to the x. And remember our 3 points, -1, 0, 1. So 2 to the negative 1 is 1/2. 2 to the 0 is 1. And 2 to the 1 is 2. So I go -1 and 1/2, 0 and 1, and 1 and 2. Remember, an exponential has an asymptote at 0 for the parent functions, because this is an exponential growth, and so it looks like that. But now we're going to move it 1 to the right and up 2. So the asymptote is this way, right and left. So it's going to move up 2 also. So I'm going to move my asymptote up here. So now my asymptote is y equals 2. Because, see, this x minus 1 affects the x value. It's the plus 2 that affects the y value. And my asymptote for this one is y equals 0. And so that's why this one is y equals 2. Okay? Now, before I do domain and range of g of x, let's graph it. They have this all out of order here, so it doesn't matter what order you answer it in. So I'm going to take each one of my 3 points here and move them, my translation, 1 to the right and 2 up. So this one goes 1 to the right and 2 up. So 1 to the right and 2 up. Well, there's my y-intercept that I already found, so I guess we could have graphed it and found it, but... So 1 to the right and 2 up, 1 to the right and 2 up. So now you can see our asymptote is in the right place. Okay. Now the domain of g of x, that's this one, the one that's moved, the one that's up here, 2 up. The domain of any exponential is all real numbers. I can put anything I want into an exponential. I can put a 0. I can put a -5, I can put a 2, okay? There's no restriction on exponential domain. But the range, on the other hand, remember the range is y value? Well, my asymptote gives me the range. So look at that right there. If it's y equals, that means it's a range restriction. If it's x equals, that means it's a domain restriction. So my range is 2 to infinity, but I don't include 2. And that's graphing an exponential. And there's practice in the review and the practice test. So practice this if you need extra help with it. Okay, this one is graphing a rational function. And you guys have the steps on the back of your formula sheet. So use it. The first thing it says on the formula sheet is to factor it. So I factored the denominator. And then on your formula sheet, it says find the x and y intercept. So let's just follow the order of the formula sheet. To find the x-intercept, I want to make y 0. So how do I make this equal 0? Well, the only way I can is to make the top 0. That's why your formula sheet says to make the numerator 0. So to find the x-intercept, I make x minus 3 equals 0. And I get x equals 3. So there's my x-intercept right there. To find the y-intercept, I just make y 0. Or x 0, sorry. And it's easier to put it into this one. So I have 0 minus 3. gives me negative 3. And then 0 minus 0 minus 10. So my y-intercept is 3/10. Just put it about right there. Okay, so that gives me the answer for this is part C. Okay. Then it asks me to find the vertical asymptotes. If you look on your paper, it says make the denominator 0. So my vertical asymptotes are x equals 5 and x equals negative 2. Remember, it's x minus 5 equals 0. So it's 5 and x plus 2 is 0. So it's negative 2. So I put those on here. My asymptotes, they're vertical because they're x equals. And then the horizontal tells you to look at the degree of the function. The numerator is 1 and the denominator is 2. Remember, it's the highest exponent. So the numerator is less than the denominator here. So that means it's y equals 0. So my asymptote is right here. Now remember, a point can cross a horizontal asymptote, just not a vertical asymptote. Okay? Then it says write the domain in interval notation. Well, the only thing the domain can't be is what my asymptotes are. So you can just say x doesn't equal 5 and x doesn't equal negative 2. You don't have to write that one in interval notation, okay? Then graph it. So to graph it, I need some other points. So I need to go on either side of my asymptotes here. So I'm going to write my equation here. So we can put in some points. And then just put in some points for x and y. So this is negative 2. So I'm going to put negative 3 in. And I get negative 6, negative 8, and negative 1. So that gives me a negative because there's 3 negatives there, and 6 over 8 is 3/4. So at negative 3, it goes to negative 3/4. Well, remember on the outsides, if I have my asymptotes like this, on the outsides, it behaves normally. It's the inside that I've got to be careful with. So 1 point right there, I know that this one's going like this. But don't assume that this side is going up here. So let's try a 6, because this one's 5, and see what we get here. So we got 3 over 1 times 8, which is 3/8. So at 6, it's positive 3/8. So it goes up here like this, and then like this. Then on the inside, I need to check and see what's happening. But remember, they chase the asymptotes. Once it starts chasing an asymptote, it doesn't turn around and go chase the other out. See how this one is already going up? So I know it's going here, just from my x and y intercepts. But now I need to see if this side, from this point, is it going up or is it going down? So I'm going to put a 4 in here and see what happens. So when I put 4 in, I get 1 and negative 1 and 6, which gives me negative 1/6. So I know it's coming back down, and that's what my graph is going to look like. Okay?